Hello future tech leaders, I'm Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
Alright, under the enable features, I've shown you how the expand all and the collapse all works. You will be able to see everything, the headings like this, and to the extreme right hand side there's something called a little arrow mark that you see there. If you click on that, all these will actually appear in different tabs for us. If you click on this, then it will go to the single page display. And this would actually be helpful if you are trying to search something. What I mean to say is, if I collapse all and if I have these in different tabs, I want to search something which I have in employees. Let us say right. If I'm in the company tab and I try to search for that, I'm not going to find that. What usually people do is, just drop it down to one page and then when you search for it, it will be visible. Right? But then the other view that we've seen, that's a little comfortable view because you would be able to see the headings in one page, right? Rather than scrolling down and seeing the other options that you see over there. You have company accounting, tax, transactions, items, inventory, employees, CRM analytics, and web presence. We'll see in each section the enable features. This is the enable features options. Last time around, we have seen how the navigation works, how to log into NetSuite, what exactly are the transactions, what is the master data, what is your list transaction that you have over there. We've seen how to install the bundles. The initial bundle which actually gets installed on NetSuite, right? I've shown you how to go to bundles. This is where you go to the bundle, search for the bundle and install that particular bundle. If let us say you have a manufacturing SKU or let us say you have a warehouse and distribution SKU. For each module, each, different, what do you call segment, right? Industries, you have different bundles that need to be installed. Along with those bundles, you will have the dashboards and the roles customized for those particular SKUs. Let us say you have a manufacturing SKU wherein you want someone from a warehouse, right? Warehouse personnel, a person who actually builds your assemblies, right? That way you will have the roles customized and the permissions and the levels of permissions and everything will be customized. I mean as a standard roles, right? However, the customers they would actually customize these roles to, put additional bundles or additional permissions or levels that they want. That can be done right. Now we are in the enable features part and to the extreme right hand side, you've got an option wherein, if you click on this, all the enable features will be available for you in a single page. This way you can actually search for, let us say, compensation tracking that you're searching, right? If you click on this, this would be available on this page. However, if you are in the other view, wherein you are collapsing everything, right? If you collapse everything, you will not be able to find it in the same page that you have compensation and tracking. However, if you go to the employees and then search, that is when you will find that there's something called as compensation tracking. In a single page, if you want to search something out of the enable features that you have, then the other view helps you. But then this view would give you a good traction, a good look at what all headings that you have at the top, like company accounting tracks, tax, transactions, items, and inventory. All this can be done. Along with that, if you go into the other view, there is something called as collapse all. If you click on this, you would be able to see only the headings for those tabs that you see there. And as in when you click on this, the options would be visible for you. As of now, let's go back to the standard view that we have. Alright. Right. This is the in each segment. Each tab that we have a company accounting, which is when I talk about the company. This is a company-wide enable features that you have, what you can enable, what you can disable. We spoke about the departments, classes and locations already the other day. These three options, we already spoke about it. We will speak about something else. I mean whatever we have under that today. You have accounting, tax, transactions, items, inventory, employees, analytics, web presence. We will see what each tab has got for us. Under the company, this is where the projects has to be enabled. Now, along with record to report, order to cash, procure to pay modules, there is a particular module which is called as project to cash, wherein we will be able to create the projects. We'll be able to create the tasks milestones for those tasks, right? Various types of billing. Like if it's a time and material billing, or if it is a milestone billing, or if it is, there are certain different kinds of resource allocation. Part would also be there, right? You can create those projects wherein it would be available here. If you see under the relationships, there's something called as, they have named it as the jobs. However, this is projects. They've renamed it. Well, I've shown you the other day, right? Wherein you're going to rename record transactions, right? Here, somebody must have renamed my projects to be reflecting as jobs. And that is the reason you see that over there. Now, you might get confused initially as to why we have different names for this, but somebody must have changed it. I can change it back actually. Let us say we'll put that back to projects and this will be renamed as projects again. Under the enable features, you can enable this project management, planned work, job cost and project budgeting, advanced project profitability. These are all the options. And by the way, this is the advanced feature of NetSuite. This project to cash will not be available with the standard, let us say warehouse and distribution or manufacturing SKU or whatever it is. This comes with an additional cost. Customer has to buy a license for these projects that I'm showing you right now. And this is used for the software services industry. SAS, software as a service, right? Whoever is dealing with services, like let us say they do not have the inventory items in their warehouse. Rather, any company which has software as a service, maybe they have labor who actually do the painting work, the denting or any manufacturing work, which is a service rather, for that particular industry. There are projects which are created and this is an advanced bundle that we have for NetSuite. I do have a question though before we go on, right? A couple of things, right? One, I'm working in the non-profit industry, particularly for a journal publication company, a non-profit industry journal publication. Maybe we can call that maybe media and publishing. If we can keep this training along those lines, that'll be helpful. I'm not doing anything manufacturing or software as a service. Absolutely. That's one thing. Then another thing which I just want us to keep in mind, or just I want to clarify. Let's say I turn on project tracking because I've used this project tracking in some other software like QuickBooks and all that. Let's say I turn it on right. Will it be available for me to select if I wanted to raise a journal entry? I'm really curious because the way I've used project before is not really from a resource planning perspective. I've used project to track the individual programs that we've done, such that I can collect cost and revenue based on that program and I can determine the profitability. I'm just curious to see how it works in NetSuite. Let's turn it on. Let's try to create a journal entry. Let's see, will I have the option to select a project from a journal entry? And let me see the reporting capabilities. I think I'm really interested in this. If you don't know, if you don't mind, we'll see that. I mean, when we get into the transactions, we can take a look at it. Sounds good. Sounds good. Great. Coming to the ERP, general options that you have multiple units of measure that you can enable, right? When I say multiple units of measure, I'm pretty sure you understand what that means, right? If you go into the units of measure, let us say you have the base unit, which is weight. I can actually define my base unit as weight and I can put in multiple conversions like, kilograms, grams, pounds, right? If you enable this multiple units of measure, that is when you can do that, or else it will be only single unit of measure, wherein for weight you can just specify ages and you cannot mention anything else. And this use delete deletion reason. Now, whenever you create a transaction with the NetSuite, you will, as an administrator, if you have full access to the NetSuite system, then you will be able to delete that. However, before deleting customer, the NetSuite will ask you for a deletion reason. A little pop-up comes up. Why do you want to delete? And that will be stored in the backend. Multi-subsidiary customer. If you enable this particular feature, when we are creating the customers, I go into lists, relationships, and my customers. I think that's open one of the customers that we have. If you are not enabling the multi-subsidiary customer feature right, you will be able to customer only for one subsidiary. You will not be able to create it for multiple subsidiaries. However, when you enable the multi-subsidiary feature, then you will have an option where you can select the primary subsidiary and the secondary subsidiary, and you will be able to use it for any subsidiary that you want. Right. When you put in a sales order, for that matter, right, there will be an option for you to select your subsidiaries based on your customer that you have. I can say my SkyZone subsidiary, I can add it. And then my Josh test is one of the subsidiaries which I can add it. When I put in a sales order, initially it pulls up the primary subsidiary, which is Canada, and it will have an option to actually change the subsidiary over there, which means I can do my business with this customer from different subsidiaries. Right. I can raise a sales order for this customer to a Canada subsidiary through a SkyZone subsidiary and through Josh Test subsidiary as well. That is why that's how your multi-subsidiary customer would actually work. Now coming to the advanced numbering. When you enable this advanced numbering, I want to show you something. If you go here and if you go into the auto-generated numbers, here you can set up the prefix and suffix for your entities, for your document numbers, for your CRM related stuff and all those things. What happens here is that let us say for my client I say CL should be my prefix. Right. And I can enable this and then click on CL. Right. I say suffix as NT, probably I just anything that I want. And then I can specify the minimum digits that it has to generate as well. Right? What happens here is now, let me bring up the roadmap for you. Right? With this setting my client, whenever I create the initial client, it starts with CL. Alright. And then the current number is 2, which means the next number is going to start from 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Three and an NT. This is how it works. Whenever I create another client next time, when I enable this feature, and when I create another client next time, this is how it works. And then it increments just like this. That's how it works. That is how your prefix, your suffix is going to work. Now, in the other optimum, there's something called as allow override. Now what this does is, if you select this option, allow override, and I'm creating a customer for the first time, right? It generates my client ID as this. However, if I allow the users to override this, then I can do this of my choice, which ideally is not a business case because the administrators would want to control the way these numbers are created, right? The entities, the CRM and everything that gets created. They want to control it. Obviously, they are not going to allow the users to change the way they want it to be, right? And then you specify what's your initial number as well, which means if I specify an initial number, right? And then I'm creating the record now. In 2003, this is how it works. My initial number is 1000, right? In 1001, Lenon 2, it just gets incrementing. It keeps on incrementing by 10,000 numbers that you have there. And that's how it works. This little update option that you have here, you can choose this. I mean, once you save this, you can choose to update the initial number later on. Maybe let us say I've already created like 10,000 customers. And now I do not want that to be starting from 2000. Rather, I want to start from 5,000. I can mention 5,000 here and click on update and save it. It just works. It goes to the initial number, sets it as 5,000 free. Similarly, you can do this for project employee partners or partner vendors. Hope that's clear. Now coming to the document numbers. The document numbers also work exactly the same way. Like the prefix, suffix and everything are still the same. However, there are certain options which are called as use subsidiary and use location. When you select use subsidiary, the other one will get grayed out. And when you say use location, this one gets grayed out. The way this works is when I go to the subsidiaries, let us say I'm going to go to the subsidiary here and I edit this. there is something called as document number prefix. On the subsidiary part, there is something called as document number prefix. What I want to do is my subsidiary. Someone has named it as British Pound. Usually that's not how it works, but this is a test scenario. Something someone has made that I can say, my prefix is going to be B, P. And I can save that. Whenever I create a customer for this particular subsidiary, then this is how it works. It just appends the document number prefix. If you select Use Subsidiary over here, likewise on the location, it could either be subsidiary or the location. When you go to the location here, when you click on Use Location, and if you do this, there is a document number prefix on the location as well. I can go to the new location and then there is a document number prefix for the location as well. Whenever I have a question, sorry, before you go, I have a question. If I do that, if I enable the multi-entity customer subsidiary right, the multi-customer subsidiary feature that you told me about, does it mean that that same customer would not have the same prefix for all the entities? Do you understand what I'm saying? Without having the subsidiary, if you are doing a multi-subsidiary customer right, in that case, you will have only the same name, will be reflecting across all the subsidiaries for you. But if I also, one second, before you go there, what I wanted to say was for the entities. You won't have that option, by the way. The Use Subsidiary Use Location option will not be available for the entities. This is only for the document numbers that you see. If you are creating customers for different subsidiaries, it's still going to be only same name. However, you can change the subsidiaries and use those customers for different subsidiaries, right? I mean, the building happened. The invoicing happens on the other subsidiary and everything. I mean, all the transactions, right from the sales order, the invoicing, the returns, and everything happened on one subsidiary. When you select a particular subsidiary on that client, these entities will not have the subsidiary selection option, only the document numbers, because these are subsidiary specific, right? I mean, you cannot have multi-subsidiary assembly build or multi-subsidiary blanket purchase order. That option will not be there, right? That's the reason you have this. Use subsidiary and use location option here. You can use either of them. You can use either the subsidiary as a prefix or the location as a prefix for you when you are dealing with the document numbers here. Any questions on that? I think you can go right. The advanced numbering option that we have enabled is actually this, right? When you do this, there is another option. When you click on this, advanced numbering rule sets. Let me show that to you. You can click on that. If you go to the advanced numbering rule set, you can set up, certain rules for yourself. Wherein what happened? Maybe it's one more. You can set up certain rules for your advanced numbering. Actually, it is not giving us an option for that. I don't know if it is because of the permissions in the custom administrator role that we have. Usually there is a new option that you can click over here and create a rule for yourself. And then based on that rule, it actually generates the numbers that we're talking about. That's about the advanced numbering and and the segmentation, how you add prefix and suffix to your. Do you want me to create one and show how it's going to generate right with these options? Because let's try it. Let me save that. Come back. That's about the advanced numbering then. Again, this is a resource management which we spoke about already, wherein the resource allocation can be done for the projects. Let's not get into that. Here is where you would actually enable the multiple currencies for your customers. Let us say your customer deals with multiple currencies. Like Chinese, Japanese yen, Canadian dollars, US dollars. All these things can be enabled. And when you do that, you can create your currencies over here. You're going to list accounting currencies and then the currency exchange rates, right? These options will be available. These are the different currencies that you can specify. And along with that, you can also mention the currency exchange rates for your multiple currencies that you can like. And you know what's going to be from a Canadian dollar to a British pound. What's the effective date for that? Right. You can keep changing these exchange rates with the way they actually change. Does NetSuite automatically update this rate or you have to manually? It does update the rate automatically. But if you want to change it, you can still do that. Right. And file cabinet. We spoke about the file cabinet the other day, right? You go into the documents files and then file cabinet. This option will be available on you. If you enable this during the data management, you have to enable the file cabinet, and that is when this would be available. Oh, I think we spoke about creating a customer and we wanted to see how that works. Right? Right. Right. Let's create a customer for us. I go into new. Well, let's just fill in the mandatory fields for now. And then I will show you how it actually works. Alright. You can put in the email address here, and then this is where you select the primary subsidiary. And you can select multiple subsidiary over here as well. Just the way I've shown you earlier. Let's not get into all the other tabs, but we just wanted to see what would be the ID that gets generated. You see this to be generated right now. Since we've put in the advanced numbering and, we've put in the prefix and suffix for the client, we will see how this gets generated. And when I get into the sales order stuff, you see this. That's how it gets generated when you actually do that. Alright, let's go back. Now the duplicate detection and merge. NetSuite provides an automatic duplicate detection for customers, leads, vendors, and it merges the duplicate records as well. How does that do? When we go into the SEP and there is something called as duplicate detection. If you scroll down, you see this under the company, you have the duplicate detection. When I go into this, there's a little setup that you need to do right. You can detect your duplicate customers, duplicate vendors, duplicate partners and contacts. And how do you? You've got to set up certain. You can actually do this as well to detect duplicates across subsidiaries. Alright, that can be done as well. How can you do this now? As of now, on the client fields to match on, I said email domain only, which means if I'm creating, a customer, if I'm putting in an email ID, detect this as duplicate because we're just saying that the domain, even if the domain matches, right, we want this to be giving us an option as duplicates, right? Rather than doing that, usually what people do is, in a business scenario, we actually do the full email. You see this? This is how it's usually done, that even if I have the email addresses like this, it should not be, detecting the customer as duplicate. Rather, only if I have the email address like what I have shown, right? Only in this case, this has to be as a duplicate. I can say if my email full is an option, that is when we actually need to detect this as a duplicate. That is one criteria. Now you can also say, you can put in another criteria as well along with email ID. I can say, I want to, put my phone number as well, right? But when you do this, the system identifies your duplicate criteria only if it matches both the cases, right? The email has to be matching and the phone number also has to be matching. Only then it detects it as a duplicate for us. Right. That's one thing. Now there are certain excluded domains for us as in Gmail, Hotmail, Rediff, right? Simparica, Verizon, Yahoo, because these domains that I see here are most commonly used by a lot of people like Cox, Earthlink, Comcast. All these things are, emails that probably a lot of people use. And this actually is excluded only when you have mentioned this as domain only, right? You see this domain only, right? This gets excluded only if you are using that as domain only. Anyways, if you mentioned email full, then obviously it will search for the full email address only. It will not search for the only domain option, right? In that case, that should be fine. These are the excluded domains that you have from the duplicate detection criteria and on the other preferences. Now, what do you want to do once you identify these duplicates with NetSuite? How do you want to proceed? Right? One thing is show duplicate warning pop up on records. Whenever you're trying to create, a customer with a similar email address, then it will throw a warning message saying that a customer already exists with the same name or with same email ID, just a warning message. And then how do you resolve it? Do you want to resolve that manually, or do you want NetSuite to resolve that for you by deleting the duplicates access? Which we do not want that to happen, right? Sometimes we may want to have customers with same email. Two different customers with same email address as well, right? Because they might be having different entities from different states and you might want to create it with different names and with the same email ID. In that case, we actually do it manually. When you select this manually, what happens is when you go to the lists, there is something called as duplicate entity, duplicate resolution. I navigate to lists, mass update, and then entity duplicate resolution. I go here and you see this now. As of now, since I have selected, the full email address, I see a couple of customers which are already duplicate for us. Why are these duplicates? Let us see. Let's get into the customers. I can open it from here only. By the way, there are hyperlinks to my customers, right? I can open them. These are two leads which I have Kalyan at the @gmail.com and then Kalyan at the @gmail.com. These are through two different leads which I have with the same email ID, right? And that's the only reason why my NetSuite is actually showing them as duplicate. What I can do is I can select one as a primary, one as a duplicate. Hina said I can select as primary and the other one has duplicate, and I say submit selected. When what this happens is it deletes the tname for us and then it keeps the other one. Let us say it still says it's cute. By the way, if there are certain transactions for that customer, then you know it won't delete the transactions. I mean, it won't delete the customer. By the way, you will get an error saying that there are certain transactions on the other customer and you will not be able to proceed further unless you delete those transactions. Looks like there might be certain transactions with the other customer. And that's reason it is not resolving it for now, but it might take some time. It searches for all the available transactions and then it can show what needs to be done with the other customer there. That's about there you go. It got resolved actually. It deleted Tina set. If I search for Tina set right now, it won't be available because it's already deleted. However, if I search for Tina, then it can be available as a lead for me. Hope that's clear. That's about the duplicate resolution status, wherein you will be able to see the status of that as well. This is the duplicate. This is the entity duplicate resolution. This is the duplicate resolution status page that we've come across, right? Alright, that's about your duplicate resolution. Let's close this out. This is the one which you see. This report may have duplicates is what it says. This is a warning that we've done, but if I refresh this, I don't think it should be available right now because it's deleted. Right. Let us go to the next feature that we have, which is, I think we're done with this. Mobile push notifications. You know, if you want the mobile push notifications for the company, then you can enable this option. Alright, we are done with the company part. Let's get into the accounting. And I think you're more interested in this accounting. To enable the accounts receivable, the accounts payable, the accounting part. Usually when we are dealing with the NetSuite, when we are trying to enable the features, these are the basic features that we actually enable because we want the sales, which is AR, and we want purchase, which is AP, right? And then the accounting. When very rarely there might be a scenario where certain customers do not use the accounting on NetSuite. They might have accounting on a different ERP and they do not want to use accounting. In that case, you can actually disable this as accounting part. And certain customers may not use the AR in NetSuite. They might use it on Salesforce, right? In that case, you disable the AR part and some of them may not use the purchasing on NetSuite. They might use Billcom or they might use, some other tool, some other ERP. In that case, they disable this AP. However, there might be integrations that flow in from these other tools that I'm talking about, Salesforce to NetSuite Billcom to NetSuite QuickBooks to NetSuite for accounting. These integrations, when they are in place, you can disable these features, but then the transactions that happen on the other ERP, they would still flow into NetSuite as transactions. Once you enter them in Salesforce and you sync them, they automatically flow onto NetSuite as a sales order or an invoice. And for these net integrations to be working, there are certain connectors that need to be used, like a Celigo or a Boomi connector, right? Technical consultants who are with the company, they are actually do these integrations between different products, right? Different ERPs. Alright. And then accounting periods. Once you enable the accounting periods get enabled as well. Where can you see the accounting periods? You go into SEP accounting and then there's something called as managed accounting periods. If I scroll down, I think I'm scrolling down way too fast. Alright, this is your managed accounting periods. What all can you do with this managed accounting period? You can set up a full year, right? You click on this full year option. As of now, I think only 2024 and 2025 are set up. But then if you click on this set up full year and then you select 2026, right? I'm not, doing a 2026 as of now, but then this would be your period format. What is the calendar? Months, year and period, time and everything. And once you click on save, it automatically generates the complete year for you, like starting from February, January, February, March and April. You can set up a quarter only. You can set up the base period also. And when you want to close out your periods, let us say we are in April right now. When you want to close out the period, each period, there are certain checklists that you have to follow, which the accounting team usually does at the end of the month, as you know, right? You got to click on this checklist and you have to lock your AP transactions, AR transactions and lock all right. Once you do this, you click on this task and you mark all submit right. When you do that, we are actually locking all the subsidiaries that I have here. The status changes to green. Likewise, you've got to lock AP, lock all, and then you need to resolve date period matches right. You're reviewing your negative inventory now manually. You go there. You review all these things. Each step has to be followed in order for you to close out this particular period there. What they do is, initially on 30th of every month, 31st of every month, they lock APR, they lock everything. These are the three different things that you would do. First, that nobody would put in any transactions, right? You do not want anybody to put in sales orders or purchase orders, or you don't want anybody doing any transactions in that particular month. You lock these three things and then you go to this resolve. If you see, the prerequisite for resolve date period matches is lock all. Now the prerequisite for lockup all would be a lock AP. Lock AP and AR, by the way. I'm going to lock my APR. But when you lock, how you reopen? When you lock what? When you lock, can you reopen? You just got to click on this again. Right? You click on this again and then just it's locked as of now. You click on submit. Oh, did I not mark all? Unmark all and then got. And then it reopens everything. Let's reopen this because we might put in some transaction. Not only we, but people who are doing the test transactions will be able to put in that. You wanted to look at the resolve dates, period mismatches and all that. Wool. Let me log this then. Once that's done, these are manual tasks, by the way. Previous period open. You're not able to close. Check this. Resolve date period matches. The reason for that is if I go into the list, my previous period is open, the March and February. It open. I first have to close out the previous periods. Only then I'll be able to do this. The previous period for this will also open. It says, let's go back. Alright, 22/4 is my starting period here. It should allow us. That's what we have on the sign. See, there are periods open since 2014 onwards. Let's take the first period in 2014. This is already locked. Resolve date period matches. This is also done. If I open this, you just have to mark this task as completed. You can resolve date period mismatches, and then I can go back to my period closed and mark this task as complete. They actually, go into the date period mismatches. They would see if you know anything. If there is a mismatch, they come here and then mask task as complete. Once you do that, the other option that you have here would actually get enabled, which is review negative inventory. I think it was review negative inventory. Manually, the warehouse personnel would go into the inventory stuff. They would see if there is a negative inventory in that, they would see everything. And if they know that there's no negative inventory, or if they've already resolved that, then they, just review the negative inventory and mark this task as complete again. Basically, these are manual tasks that will be performed. Absolutely. These are manual tasks. However, there is an option. You get into setup. Where's that? You go into setup accounting and there's something called as accounting preferences. When I go into this accounting preferences, there is something called as quick period close. I think it's called as quick. You say this allow quick close of accounting periods. If you, we haven't got into the accounting preferences yet, but since I'm showing you the periods, I'm just showing you this particular feature that we have. We will discuss all these things in detail when we get into the accounting preferences. If I select this, allow quick close of periods, right? Now I save this. And then I go back to my manage accounting periods. Once I go there, quick close. We will get a button actually which says quick close here, but somehow I did not get it. Certain features, You know it might take some time on my sandbox account, and that's the reason some other things won't get enabled immediately but allow quick close of accounting period. If you click on this field, help, right, it will show you what exactly I meant. This quick close feature with one click. This feature enables you to mark complete each task in the period close list for more than one open accounting periods. Which means if I close December 2023, with this particular feature, there will be a feature which gets enabled here, which is a quick close. I don't know why is it not coming up. However, if I click on that and if I close December 2023, right, every period before December 2023 gets closed automatically. Which means, let us say my September was open. My October was open. November is open and December is open. If I use that quick close option, right, I don't have to go through all these checklists. By the way, when I have that quick close button enabled for me, I don't have to, go through all these checklists. It's just a single button click. I click that and then close all the periods. Now this why you may ask, what is the business case behind this, right? The business case is that let us say the January is closed already, January 24. But one of the users want to put in some transaction which was missed, right? As an administrator, as a controller, you would open that period by going through this checklist. And then once the transaction is done, once the user confirms that it is done, then you can directly click on the quick close rather than then going through the entire checklist, because you don't want to do that, right? There's only one transaction and the transaction has happened in front of you. You don't have to go through the entire checklist process once again, but just click on that quick close and then close out that period, right? For that purpose that I know, why is it not available? I think in this administrative role, the customer administrator role that they've created, probably they've not given us the permission for that quick close. That is the reason you don't see it over here. That is about your. Now, one other important thing in the checklist is that when you are dealing with the intercompany transactions, right, create intercompany adjustments. This is the only option from this which actually creates the adjustments, creates the intercompany, the journal entries for you when you're doing this particular step. You might have intercompany purchase orders and sales orders which are already created, but the journal entries would not be created until you click on this create intercompany adjustments and close it. This is something we are going to get to right. We will see that when we're doing intercompany stuff. Alright. Calculating of the kinds of consolidated exchange rates. This also generates, recognizing the revenue. All these things happen with your closing of the periods. Alright. Here you can actually enable and disable your dynamic allocation, the expense allocations, right? If you want to allocate your expense between your departments, classes and locations, right? Various departments. You might have one expense that you want to distribute between certain departments. Then you can use this expense allocation. I mean, if you don't enable this expense allocation, then that feature will not be available. If it's enabled, how do we use it? Let's just quickly see an example briefly. We will see that when we go into the transaction. Beautiful. I'll certainly show that to you. Expense allocation. You can have your amortization templates. That is as far as the amortization is concerned. You can put in your expense reports, right? The employees, they can put in the expenses. And when you are putting in a transaction, let us say a purchase order, right? Here you can select your expense along with your items. You can select the expenses as well. As of now, I see only the items. However, when I go into my transactions and I need to enable the expenses on my purchase order, get them in the items and inventory. I don't know if it's a part of the accounting features, accounting preferences. I go to my accounting preferences and I think it's here. Allow expenses on purchases. I have to allow this. Only then I would be able to enter expenses on my purchase order. Let me enable this. You see this now. I've got the expenses and then the second tab is for items. If you have to enable the expense allocation, and this is one of the accounting preferences that you need to set up. Any questions on that? 3. Right? This is the intercompany framework that you have to enable. Maybe there's no elimination subsidiary in that. You see this. To enable this feature, you must create an elimination subsidiary as a subsidiary of root subsidiary. That is when you will be able to do that. We'll do that when we get into the transactions. And by the way, when we are doing the transactions, and if there is certain things that I have to show to you on the enable features and accounting preferences, then we will switch back and forth. Don't worry about that. I'll still show you how things work with and without enabling these features. As of now, we're just talking about what these enable features would actually do. Right. We can do that. We can switch back and forth between enable features and all. I'll show the transactions. What is a consolidated payment? Your customers can have child customers and parent customers as well. Right. They can roll up to your parent customer. Let us say this is how you can have it. Right. When you enable your consolidated payments and your any child customers also. Right. Top level customers. You can actually receive the payments from your parent customer as well. It's not mandatory that you need to receive it from child 1 or child 2 when you're dealing with them. You can get the payments, credits, deposits through the top level customers or individual customers and print those consolidated customer statements as well. When you do that, now what is this in-transit payment? When you put in a purchase order, you make a payment to your vendor after receiving the material, right? If you enable this in-transit payment, what happens is as in when you make the payment lands up in the in-transit process. And when you get the confirmation from your vendor saying that they have received the payment, that is when you can actually process that particular payment. As you know, all these transactions that we're talking about, the vendor payments, the customer payments when the payments that you make, customer payments that you receive, everything happens outside of NetSuite. Right. It's not that we land up on the internet banking page through NetSuite and then you end up making a payment over there and receive payments. No, it doesn't work that way. Every transaction has to be done twice. One is an outside transaction. That is the original bank transaction that you do through a check or a cash payment or, a net banking. Whatever you do has to be outside of NetSuite. And once that's done, users get back to the NetSuite and record it on NetSuite. It's not that they're actually making. It's the same with all the ERPs. It's not only with NetSuite. The ERP that you have is basically for recording the transactions. Right. Thanks. Alright. Vendor prepayments. If you enable that, there will be, a single vendor that you can actually make a payment through. Right? There is vendor prepayment. When you enable, you will have this option. Even before you put in any transaction. Let us say there is no purchase order and there's no bill. Get right? The vendor bill has not been generated, but still you would be able to do a vendor prepayment because certain vendors might want you to because of high value of the goods, right? You might be buying something which is of very high value. They want to make a half payment before they send out the material. Right? That is when the vendor prepayment is used. And once this vendor prepayment is entered into the system, let us say there is a 500,000 payments that you've made. Right. This $500,000 payment that you make would actually be reflecting as an advance on that particular vendor. And when you make the payment next time, probably you might want to pay $1 million, right? The entire consignment is for 1 million. When you want to make a payment for 1 million, it knocks off this 500,000 from here and then you can make a payment for the rest. That's how the prepayment works. You can have your multiple calendars available there and then statistical accounts. That's one thing. Now, what is a balancing segment? While creating your journal entries, right, you can actually create your own balancing segments that you want to do. That is one thing. And you can also create your own custom segments as well. If I scroll down here, I have the subsidiary class and location, right? But along with these, there is something called as a custom segment, right? Let us say the customer has something else, like a division, right? They probably have classes, departments, and locations. However, they might have a fourth segment as well, which they want to show it up in the reporting, right? In that case, we have something called as custom segments. You scroll down, go to the accounting preferences. You got to search for those. Here's your balancing segments, by the way, right? You can create the balancing segment from here and custom segments. There is an option where you can enable the custom segments. Let's see. Is it not a part of this? One second. I don't think custom segments is a part of enabled features, but let's just see. The custom segments is already enabled for us. Allow the creation of custom segments specific to your business, right? You can actually create your own custom segment that you want to create. It will somewhere. Oh, there you go. Here it is. I can click on this custom segment, and what I can do is I'll create this as my fourth segmentation. Usually on next week. There are 3 segmentations like classes, departments, and locations. And here I can say that I want to create a 4th segment. And then I want to show it under the GL impact as well. Beautiful. And I can put in the values for this as well. Let's say Division 1, Division 2. Like a drop down. Correct. How many custom segments can I create? Well, there's no limit to that. I mean, usually customers ask for 3 or 4, but then you can create more than I don't know. I mean, there's no exact number that I got off, but then once that's done, you can filter it by class, department, and location. These are the different segmentations that we already have, right? That can be, I can create this. Alright. It says the segment will not have any GL impact until you apply this segment to a transaction. Right. Once I create that custom segment, it will be available in my setup again. If I scroll down, it has to come up here actually. Why has not come down? Is there something that I have to enable? One thing is that here you can enable it for purchase transaction, for sales transaction. Whenever you're creating it, these options will not be available unless you save that. Right? Initially, we did not have all these options over there. Once you save that, only then you will have these options to actually enable it. You can have it on your expense, report on your item, fulfillment, customer payment assembly. You can mark all of it. You can have the custom segment enabled for everything, and then in transaction columns, wherever you want, transaction columns, in the sense on a sale item or any other item that you have, You can actually enable these segments over there as well. You can put them on the journal entries or the opportunities on the item file page on the expense reports, right? And all these things, you can enable this particular division that you have there. And then you can, select that particular thing from the drop down. Once you do this, it actually has to be available under my company. Oh, I see the activity code, but I know my selected shown list. We should see the vision, right? We should see the visions. Absolute. We should see the divisions. That is what I'm looking out for. There you go. It took some time, but here it is. You see this? Beautiful. Beautiful. This is how you have your lists available. Now, when I get into a purchase order, let us say I have enabled the purchase order option, right? See this. This is how you can actually create your own custom segment when you're trying to, build anything. You can have that enabled on your every transaction that you do on this week. Like that be on your purchase order, sale order, or your journal entry, or that your intercompany sales order and purchase orders that you want. The reason they want to do that is, when they generate reports, right? I can generate the report based on my location, based on my class, based on my department, and on and forth. Likewise, I also can generate a report based on my division. That is my full segmentation that I have. And this will have a GL impact as well. That's about your custom segments, by the way. Let's close down this. We'll come back to the accounting preferences later on. Let's go to this. There you go. Oh, we were not here, I think. We checked the custom segments, by the way. Balancing segments is where we were. Let's go back there. Alright, we're done with this. Now, this part that you see here is ARMM Advanced Revenue Management. Now, this is a very advanced topic on NetSuite, right? Usually, the functional consultants who are there, they wouldn't be working on this advanced revenue management. You know people who are like 5 or 8 years of experience with NetSuite. Only they will be able to handle this advanced revenue management. What happens as a part of this ARMS is that we can recognize the revenue at various stages of a project, right? Once the milestone is completed, like I said, there's a 25% of revenue that gets accumulated there. That is when we can recognize that revenue once that milestone is hit. And then another 25% at next milestone, another 25%. Likewise, they can actually divide your revenue that gets generated within NetSuite to be recognized in different stages of a project, or it can be linked with your sales orders as well. Right. Once you enable this advanced revenue management, there is something called as revenue elements, revenue arrangements, and revenue plans, right? Now, these are the ones which get generated. You can specify what is your start date and an end date for that particular sales order. When is it going to be closed? What is the next milestone? And once that is done, you would be able to create revenue plans based on your revenue elements, right? The items are called as the revenue elements, and then you have your revenue plans that can be generated using this ARM feature. There are certain rules that you can create the revenue rules. Based on the revenue rules, the revenue arrangements would get generated automatically. And then probably end of our training, I know I might take just about a class for you to understand how the revenue works. Probably we'll just take one transaction. We will see how the revenue plans are generated, how the revenue arrangements are generated based on the rules that we have there. Once this is enabled, this is where you would be able to see those things. Let me scroll down in revenue arrangements table. You will have the revenue arrangements, revenue allocating, revenue arrangements, right? All these things, we have to do it. I mean, there's something called as update the revenue arrangements and revenue recognition plans. All these things, they get enabled only when you enable that ARM feature. Now, if that ARM is not enabled, usually in a standard environment, the ARM wouldn't be enabled, right? If that is not enabled, you would not be able to see anything that you see here right from this arrangements, plans and allocating revenue. Whatever you see as revenue will not be available if you do not enable the ARM feature that is visible over here. And this is your amortization, right? You can amortize your payments. Where are you going to see them again? You scroll down to your financial. This is where the allocation schedules are. This is, allocation, the expense allocation that we spoke about. This is where the allocation schedules will be created. And this is how the amortization. There are certain amortization templates that you create before you, getting it here. And then you will do the transactions. Those schedules will be available here under the lists, amortization schedules. If you go into accounting, scroll down, see these revenue events and rules. These are also part of that ARM that we spoke about earlier. Revenue elements, rules, plans, events, event types, all these things are a part of your ARM option, right? Here's where you have your amortization schedules and amortization templates. First, you have to create those amortization schedules, templates, and then you will be able to, when you're doing the vendor bills, that is when you can amortize those vendor bills based on the templates that you see here. Alright. This is about the multi-book accounting, by the way. This is one other advanced feature that NetSuite has. Like you can have your primary accounting book and you can have a secondary accounting book, right? That is when you will use this multi-book accounting feature that you have. Unfortunately, at least, I have not worked on the multi-book accounting earlier, right? That is something that I would not be able to explain in detail, but then you will have all the information on your help page. Just in case you want to explore about multi-book accounting, you can do that. I did work on the advanced revenue management. I can explain you that amortization, the expense allocations and everything we will go through. But then accounting is something that I wouldn't be able to cover for you. That's fine. That's fine. Alright. And then coming to the tax structure, right? There are certain advanced taxes. NetSuite for United States, right? This is a perfect combination that you have for NetSuite because 90% of the customers that NetSuite has are from the United States. What NetSuite has done is, the tax structure is automatically created for NetSuite. All you have to do is there is something called as Nexus. You go into accounting and you scroll down onto the tax structure. You can create a nexus of your choice. You know nexus in the sense any state nexus, for that matter Florida, California, New York, New Jersey, anything that you know network, any state that from the United States, you can create nexus. Once you create your nexus, the tax control accounts get created automatically. That's part 1. And then what I mean, the tax control accounts are nothing but your VAT accounts, and you know the statistical accounts VAT on purchase, VAT on purchase, sale. These VAT on board. These are some of the control accounts that get created automatically. Now along with that, there's something called as use state tax tables. When you run this, tax tables, automatically your tax types, your tax codes, and everything get created based on this. Since we are talking about that, let's try and generate certain things and then we'll see how it works. I go into the Nexus. As of now, I see that Texas, Ontario is from Canada. That's fine. And United States is North Carolina. Let me create. Before I create that, I just wanted to show you something. I scroll down. Let's open up the tax control accounts, tax types and codes. If I go into my tax types right now, I select my country, which is United States. These are the tax types which are there right now. Now the transit, the state, other one county, and all these things right. If I go into my tax codes, I select United States. And then I see that I have 114 tax codes as of now, and for which states. One is for North Carolina and the other is for O is everything for North Carolina. I don't think. Hold up. Oh, everything is from North Carolina as of now. That's cool. Right. What we do is I go into my setup accounting, scroll down to my tax structure again, and I go into this use state tax tables. Alright. My nexus is already created for Texas. However, I don't see the tax codes in here. What I do is I go to my state tax import table. I select the state tax table, I select Texas and I save it. Once I do that, I suppose, once the tax codes are created, right, once the sales tax import, it actually begins in a little while. And whoever is the main contact on your NetSuite instance as of now, it's training feedback. At the end of the day, once these state tables, the tax codes are generated, it sends an email automatically to that particular email that is specified here. Let's go back to the tax codes and then we'll see if the tax codes are generated. I see 295 now. You see this? Yes. Texas codes are generated automatically and a whole lot of Texas codes actually. I think about 1100 something Texas codes which were not there. These are all the Texas codes right now. And the reason why you have that is NetSuite back-end tables have got this data already fed into them. Right? All these options that you see here based on Texas ZP, ZK, right? These are all the different codes that we have there. And based on the zip codes. When you're doing the sales transaction, right, based on the zip codes, it picks up the rate automatically. Based on the zip code that you have specified on your customer record over there, when you're putting in the address, based on that, it picks up the rate code automatically. Rate percentage, by the way. This is how it works. Now, if you want me to show another nexus, I can add another nexus. It's the simple way. You just have to. Let us add New York. Let's see. Oh, I've added New York. I go into the state import tax tables, import again. Here you would be able to, see the tax accounts as well. I don't know if I can filter it by country or something, but there you go. This is the tax payable Texas. And then sales. Is that the only one for Texas? I think that's the only one. But then for Ontario, you've got, PST expenses Ontario, PST payable Ontario. These are all automatically created by NetSuite when you create your nexus. I refresh that and I would see the New York sales tax payable tax account, which got created automatically now. It works. Let's go back to our state tax import table. Scroll down already. And then I select New York. This is the tax agency. And this is the tax account which got selected automatically. You see it here because this has to be created. When you are dealing with the other countries other than United States, right? Let us say you're dealing with the other countries. This procedure that we are not doing is not automated. You have to create your nexus first. Then you have to create your tax type. Alright. And then you got to create your tax codes. By the way, how do you create your tax codes manually? I'm going to show that as well. This is your state tax import table, right? Click on Save. This automatically is going to create the tax codes for us as far as New York is concerned. Right. Let's go back to our tax codes and we'll see what's the number that it's going to increase. See, just another 8 or 900 added right away for my New York tax codes. Right. I can scroll down to my New York. Looks like it's too far away. Here's where my New York starts. Alright. There are certain counties that we have in New York, Otsego, Oneida, Olin, Moravik, right? These are some of the countries and counties that we have. Based on that, NetSuite automatically generates all these tax codes, right? On the sales transaction, it gives you an option to select these tax codes as well. If you are dealing with the other countries, let's say for United Kingdom, then the state tax import chart table that we've done right now is not going to work. You have to create your nexus and then you've got to create the tax type over here along with the tax accounts, right? The tax accounts also have to be created manually by clicking on tax account and you select your, let us say your country, wherein I don't know, maybe for Ontario, if you want to create something. You can do this. You can name you can put in the name for your tax control account. And then, what is the tax account type? What is the type that you have if it is purchase or sale? Now, once that is done, what you have to do is on the tax codes. Click on the tax code. Select your state country. By the way, it's Canada, maybe. You have to specify what's the tax name. You've got to give it a display name and then you specify what the rate is. And here is where you have to select your tax agency. Once you create your nexus, the tax agency will be created automatically. You just have select, let's say Ontario Tax Agency, right? This is your purchase tax account, the control account that we have created here. This is the control account that we were speaking about, right? Upon the tax code, you have to specify your control account, your sales tax account, and then you save your tax code. Now, this is one thing that you have to remember, that if you are implementing it for your customers, I know that you would be an end user on the NetSuite, but if you are implementing it for your customers, this information, the entire information is provided by your customer. You don't have to worry about what's going to be my tax name, what's going to be my percentage of tax, and all this. Any questions on this tax part that we spoke about? I think no questions for now. Maybe when we start getting into transactions, we'll see it again. There's something called as tax schedules as well, wherein you can generate, if it is a non-taxable or if it is taxable. You can actually specify that over your, if you select this as non-taxable, then it's not gonna, generate the tax in that particular transaction at the line level. You will at the item level. In fact, you're generating an item. That is when you will have taxable and non-taxable options specified. You can actually select if it is taxable or non-taxable from there. 1 second. Taxable, no, it says alright. And here, if I go into the taxable option, I edit, I have to say that these are taxable. That is when you will be able to select the tax code from the drop down there. That's one thing. Coming to your. Now, before you do all these things, there's something called as set up taxes as well. Before you generate your nexus and before you generate your tax codes and tax types and everything, there is set up taxes as well. This is where you have to specify, do you want to enable the tax lookup on sales orders and purchase orders, right? Unfortunately, there's no field help for this, but what this does is this is the one which actually selects the tax codes based on the zip code that I was talking about earlier. This is for Afghanistan, by the way. You've got United States here. Customers default to taxable. Do you want the customers as taxable or not? And what is the default code that you can select? You have to specify what is the default code. When you are doing it for the customers and you can select for California, I don't see the tax preferred tax agency for California. This is strange. Usually we will have the tax agency getting created automatically when we do the California. Let's do this. Let's run the state tax template for California as well. And we'll see. The codes would be generated. I'm sure about that, but let's see if the preferred tax agency gets generated as well. Let's set up to California. Oh, there you go. The tax agency is not there. This is strange. Default tax agency. Why is it not there? I do not have one for California. There seemed to be some scripting error. Let's try this again. Usually the tax agency gets selected automatically. Oh, I don't see it again. I don't know if it's allowed. If it allows me to do that. Values tax type list. Tax forms a tax type list. What's the tax type? Alright. Alright. This is the one that we were trying, right? There's something missing. I think it's going to be. Provide for the values for the following fields of tax a tax agency. It seems I think maybe I just have to refresh this once because I have created the tax agency California a little later, right? I might have to refresh this and then do it all over again. I don't see the California thing again. One second. Usually the tax agency is like the vendors. You know, this gets created as a vendor. Now this gets created automatically when we add the nexus, in fact, which did not happen. Looks like it has not taken the tax agency from here. On the vendor, what are we supposed to do? Nothing seems to be working on this. Let's do one thing. Let's delete this tax agency. Let me go back to the nexus. Let me see if I can delete that California nexus from there. There you go. That's not. This is the problem. On the nexus, the preferred tax agency is not there. There is no option for me to delete this as well. Let me see this. California state of province is selected. Oh, tax codes. Can I not create tax agency from here? Against. Looks like I do not have the permission for that. Let's look into that. But the actual scenario is that whenever you create it for United States, the procedure is pretty simple. You create a nexus, you run that state tax, run state tax import chart and all the tax codes. You know your tax control accounts and everything gets created automatically. But if it is, a country that you're dealing with outside of the United States, then you would have to do these things manually. You create a nexus, you create your control accounts, and then you create your tax types and tax codes manually from there. I'll see why this California has been created like this. And I don't have an option to delete my nexuses. There usually when I just edit this, I would have an option, but I think it's because of the permissions that we do not have an option to delete the nexus. But if you go into the Texas, right, you see the tax agency. This is how it gets generated automatically when you're creating the nexus. There you go. Let's create one more. I'll show you how that works. As of now, I do not have the tax agency, right? Once I save it, the Alabama already exists. Let me do something else. Colorado. Once I save it and when I go back to my nexus, right? You see this? This has to generate it automatically, but unfortunately for the California, somehow that didn't get generated because it could be many reasons. Maybe by that time the system might have gotten disconnected or something like that. But here in the actions, you will have an option to delete that in the edit mode. But unfortunately, I have it for this. Oh, this is strange. See this, it's got created correctly. And that's the reason I have an option to delete. But when I go into this United States, California and this, there's no delete option as well. It got stuck in between. Somehow it could be a technical glitch with something. Let me do this. Let's try doing it with one different tax agency and then we'll try to delete it. Oh, I don't have the delete for this as well. Let's try to run the state tax table now and see what happens. These are some of the glitches that probably we can identify and let the support team know about. These kinds of things have been stuck. Let's go to the state tax and put California, my Alabama tax agency, selected for this, which is incorrect by the way. I do not want that to happen, but let's see how it works. If you go to the tax code right now, I'm pretty sure the California tax codes must have been created. These are my California tax codes. But I mean the agency is selected incorrectly. But then when you are getting the codes right, there is on the code you will have the agency listed down like this. This is not how it's supposed to be, but then it just got created. Alright, I think we've discussed extensively about the tax structures, the nexus and everything. Let us go back to our enable features part. Oh, we were in the transactions actually. No, in the tax part. Tax is done. Let's go to the transactions now. Right? In the transactions, there are certain basic features like your estimates, your sales orders, your return authorizations. Right. If you don't enable these things like the sales order and the purchase orders, then it's as simple as that. You won't find these purchases and sales option wherein you will have these enter sales orders, enter per purchase orders. All these options would not be there. Likewise, you want to enable these estimates, the return authorizations for the purchase orders or the request for code requisitions. And all these things are the transactions that you can enable and disable. Right. Since we see the purchase contracts and blanket purchase orders on the screen right now, let's discuss a little about that. Now, this is an advanced topic that usually is part of the procurement cycle. What is a purchase contract? On a purchase contract, you can create your own contract with a vendor. Right. Now, let us say there is a vendor who provides your item $1000. Now the same item, if you are purchasing from a vendor B, the same item. By the way, he provides that for, let's say, the $990 only. You can create a contract with this particular vendor as to enough. For how many months is he going to do that? Probably, let's say, end of September 2024. You can create a purchase contract till September 30th. You can specify who the vendor is going to be and you can specify what the item is. That when you are creating a purchase order next time, you know you enter this item, you select this item, you select the vendor, then automatically it picks up this $999 instead of the $1000. That is what your purchase contract actually does. What we are saying is that against a vendor and against a particular item. Whenever I purchase an items from a vendor till and date, I'm going to get a little discount on that item. Let's say a 5% or 10% discount on the actual price. You can you can create a purchase contract and at the line level, when you're putting in the purchase order at the line level, you will have an option to select your purchase contract. By the way, it automatically selects the purchase contract as, and when you select that item, the vendor, of course, right. But then you can create multiple purchase contracts as well. Like, you can create a same combination again and say that the start date is going to be this. Not this, maybe October 1st. After October 1st till, end of December 31st, if I purchase this item, I'm going to get more discount on this. Let's say I get only for around $9.50. You can specify this too. And then if these two purchase contracts are active, do not get confused about it right now, because when we do the transactions, I will show you how the purchase contracts actually work. You can select this purchase contract 1 or purchase contract 2 as per your convenience. I mean, if it is within those dates, obviously it will select the same options that you have over there. That is your purchase contract. Coming to the blanket purchase orders. We were looking at the blanket purchase orders, right? There are two options. 1. These are the advanced procurement module. By the way, customer has to pay a little more to get these two options enabled for them, the purchase blanket purchase orders and the purchase contracts. How does a blanket purchase order work? Now let us say I want to purchase item A from my vendor, whoever it is. I want to purchase 100 quantity at an interval of 1 month. Every month. On 1st of every month, I can set up a blanket purchase order saying that 1st of May, 1st of June, 1st of July, I want this particular purchase order to be triggering 100 quantity of the purchase order. You can select a blanket purchase order. By the way, let me just show you the navigation. It's under Transactions Purchases. This is your purchase contract and this is your blanket purchase order. You can create your blanket purchases orders in such a way that every month, the first of every month, you will have these 100 quantity of an item getting generated as a purchase order. Of course, the purchase manager should approve those purchase orders. And that's when the procurement team will be able to go ahead and do an item receipt on that or send that to a vendor, do a vendor billing, all sorts of things. The purchase order process would still be the same. However, there's only one process for the blanket purchase order wherein you can specify what is your quantity. And there are two ways actually. You can either generate the purchase order at the lead time automatically, which is first of every month, or you can do that manually as well. If you select manually, you don't have to wait for 1st of every month, probably 15th of next month. I need another 100 quantity of that purchase order. Then you can select the option as manually and then you can, create a purchase order out of that. All these are enabled for you. The requisition comes a little before the purchase order. Request for quote requisitions. You can actually put them in before the purchase orders have been done. There might be a business case wherein they are not written when there is an authorization at all, right? You purchases something but you never send it back, even if the quantity is bad or good or whatever it is, depending on the business that they do. Maybe they do not want to return the item. That case, the mandatory written authorizations will be disabled from here. Any questions on that? No questions? When it comes to the multiple prices, right? On the item level, this is for the sales, by the way, sales transaction. On the item level, you can actually specify multiple prices for each item. I go into the accounting items new. This is how we create new items, by the way. I'll show that to you a little later. On the sales, if I scroll down, there are like non-inventory items, inventory items. As of now, let's select an inventory item for us. Now if I scroll down, I go to the sales pricing. There are different tabs that you can see here. One is a purchase inventory. One is a sales pricing. If I go into the sales pricing and scroll down, this is what your multiple pricing actually means. Alright, pricing levels. These are the different pricing levels that you have. Multiple prices, in the sense you can have your base price. Let's say this is my base price for, let's say, $150. These base prices can be defined in multiple currencies. You can have it for British pound, you can have for Canadian dollar, euro, Indian rupee, Pakistan. Whatever currencies that you have created, right? In those currencies, you will be able to do that. What is quantity pricing? And what quantity pricing is that? If I have this alternate price 1, 2, 3, what happens is if you're going to set up accounting and then accounting lists, here you have pricing level, right? As of now, on the alternate price, there is no discount specified. This is where you define the price levels. By the way, on the inventory item, you see this alternate price 1, 2, 3 online price. This is where it is getting it from. What I say is I go into my alternate price 1 and I say that with this I have a minus 5% discount. Minus 5 cents on my base price. It always picks up the base price. Now when I go to the alternate price in 2, I say 10% discount, right? And then I go to the alternate price in 3D. And here I can say probably 50%. Now when I go into my inventory item, let's refresh that right now because we have that back. I scroll down. So let me go back up into the sales pricing tab. Now scroll down. You see this. The discounts are appearing here right now. What I have specified over there, that's a discount. Now I can specify what my base price is and it automatically picks up my discount on the alternate price. These base price, alternate price, 2, 3, whatever I see here, I will have an option to select it at the sales order level. And this is my quantity pricing. I say that 0 to 50, it's going to be an 100 and 50 to 100 is going to be another one. Alright, let's say 100 to 150. And then like this. Now what I can do is, let's say if I sell 50 quantity, then I'm going to give customer at a 98 or 96 dollar for 20 hours. I can specify like this. And when I select 51 quantity on my sales order, then it automatically picks up this price. It does not pick up 100 over there. As of now, I'll not be able to save because I've not done anything on the item. I'll have to specify what the name is. You know what all these things are. This is how the quantity levels actually work. This is called quantity pricing based on the quantity. This is what is multi-pricing. Now the other thing that you can do is, instead of specifying the quantities over here, I go into lists accounting. It's like helping me scroll down. There's something called as quantity pricing schedule somewhere. Hold on, let me check that. Accounting quantity pricing schedule. It's in here only. Why am I not able to show it? Pricing schedules. There you go. Here it is. Click on New. Let me open this in a different tab, and here I can specify what's my quantity. Let's say no, it's a 50. Discount percentage is 5. 100 is going to be 0.8. One to 50 it's going to be. I can specify like this. You can specify what the unit types are as well. Only for non-zero quantity levels are allowed. The reason it's allowing only 4 is there is an accounting preference. Again, I'll show you what the preference is. When you can specify how many number of quantity pricing schedules you can define as well. Let's go back to our inventory item. Refresh this. Instead of giving this manually over here, what I do is when I create an item, I can specify at the CSV import level that I want this particular quantity pricing schedule. When I do this, all the discounts get carried over automatically. I see the -5, 8, 12, 10 that I've created there. And all I have to do is just specify what my base price is. Everything else gets calculated automatically. Any questions on this? No questions? Likewise, you can actually do this for British pound as well. You know, on the British pound, let us say this is only 190 pounds. Everything gets calculated. Again on the Canadian dollars, maybe it's just about $1.80. Everything gets carried. And automatically. The best part of this is that when you specify the quantities in your sale order, let's say if the quantity is between 50 and 100, then it selects -5. As in when the quantity is between 1 and 150, then it selects this 165 as a base price. And you still have an option to select the alternate price 1, 2, 3 over there in the line level. And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.